Blog Talk Radio. Welcome, living beneficiaries. This is the estate, the House of Hidalgo show. I am your host, Rick Hidalgo, or better known as Eugene Richard of the House of Hidalgo. This is Monday, the 3rd day of June of the year 2013. We got a great show for you today. Been looking forward to this one for some time now. And we'll get into that in just 1 second here. I want to let you know where you can find us on the web. You'll be able to find us at blogtalkradio.com/South Dakota DP. That's like double play, South Dakota DP. So you can go there. Our official website is therockofsalem.org. And, the estate is the only show anywhere re-educating the living beneficiary on how to live in this upside-down world. And boy, is it upside down. In fact, the guest that I have today is going to tell us just how upside down it really is. I've got a very, very special guest. Some of you may recall, if you were paying any attention at all, back, I don't know, must have been a little under a year ago. There was a lady named Randi Shannon who was running for a Senate seat in Iowa, and there was big news because what the media said was she dropped out to join the shadow government, and that was the big news. She was on the Huckabee Show and Chris Matthews, and they just tried to stuff her in a corner and make her out to be a tax evader and all kinds of crazy stuff. But I can tell you, she's a genuine woman. She's a great person, and she's doing some great things, a real patriot. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring her on the program. Are you with us, Randi?
I'm here.
Well, thanks for being here today. I'm really excited to have you. I just can't wait to hear what kind of things that you've been up to lately.
Well, I'm so glad you have me on, and I love getting out there and talking and sharing what's new and what's going on across the country, and kind of what I'm up to and how that affects others. So, I've always been a fighter for freedom at some length or another all my life. I was kind of the rebellious one in the family, and when I saw injustice, I went another direction and stood up, and it must have passed on in the genes because my sons are all the same way too, and I just couldn't live any other way. So I was attacked by Chris Matthews. He was very unfair. He never even called to talk to me. And Huckabee, he cut my mic at something like 9 or 13 minutes. And their team tricked the people that I was working with, because I was actually supposed to do that interview with somebody. And they told that person about 10 minutes before we went live that they were not going to be allowed to be on, and they told me 2 minutes before. So a little bit of trickery going on. And, that was meant to be. That was on purpose.
Right. Well, I was listening to that stuff live, and I can tell you I was cringing. The inside of me was just thinking, oh, I cannot believe they just went there. And but then I should have known too, because that's what they like to do. They like to put true patriots in a corner and try to make them fight out of it, and try to make anything that's real, they try to flip it upside down so that it doesn't seem so real, so people can keep living in their perfect little show world that they manufacture. Now, Randy, I know because I've had some, I see you on Facebook and I see you doing different things, and I know that you're very much out there as far as helping people to stand up to this corporation. How can you maybe talk about some ways that you're helping people stand up here?
Yeah, I actually started an organization. It's called 42action.org, 42action.org. And the crux of it is there's a lawsuit that you can file in a federal court because our state courts are pretty much gone. The judges are so corrupt. You'll find a good one here or there, but for the most part, they've sold out their establishment, their corporation, their UN. They just don't follow the Constitution. In fact, many of them have said, don't bring up that Constitution in my court. I don't want to hear that. I've heard of judges that plug their ears when somebody brings up what their constitutional right is. Mm-hmm. So when you've got state courts and judges that are saying that, there has to be some sort of remedy. And there is a little bit of remedy left for people that have been railroaded, like in just a simple traffic stop. We just in the last month, there have been people that have been pulled over for a bent license plate. They were minding their own business. They didn't do anything wrong. They got pulled over. The cop says, your license plate is bent. Well, it's behind the car. When do you really ever see that? And, that escalated so high. They called me. They knew what we were doing with 42action.org, that we help people. It's all pro bono. None of us are attorneys. Occasionally we'll get an attorney in that will give some information of what they would do, but none of us are practicing law. And so I actually had a witness on Skype, and then I was a witness on the phone, and I walked this person through what they should do. And I said that because the cop was so escalated that they definitely needed to call for a supervisor to the scene. And when the supervisor came, he came on the scene hot-blooded. Now, they're supposed to come onto a scene very calm and assess the situation. This guy comes flying over to the car and reaches for the door handle, and his hand flies off. He almost breaks the handle because I had made sure that the gentleman had his door locked. But he was flying over to the car to yank him out of the car. Now, that is a rogue cop. And so what can happen, they ended up arresting the guy he asked one question. It was a First Amendment right question. He asked for the cop's copy of his oath of office and a surety bond and what his name and badge number were. That's it. Mm-hmm. Those are First Amendment rights. So when that's violated, you just take that and you file what is called a Title 42 action lawsuit into federal court, and you make your statements, you make your claims. They will always try to do something that's called a 12b6, which they try to claim immunity because they're in the line of duty. But if a cop is violating your constitutional rights, then they do not get immunity. That's the thing. And so we have people that win these lawsuits all across this country. There's a really good case people can look up on the Internet, do an Internet search. We had nothing to do with this case, but it did make national headlines. And it was Man Writes Fourth Amendment Across Chest and Sues TSA, I think that's how it goes. If they just do a search for that, they can actually see an exact copy of the Title 42 lawsuit. I think Wired magazine did a good story on it. So, but there is a gentleman right now that his case is so good that they've offered to settle ahead of time for a little over $400,000. That's the first go-round. See, every time a right of yours is violated, a First Amendment right, your free speech, freedom of religion, all that, when they violate that, it's a $250,000 penalty per violation. So first, second, third, fourth, on, typically it's 1 through 10 and the 14th. And you can sue $250,000 per violation in federal court. And if they do throw you in jail or manhandle you or tase you or beat you, things like that, then that is a different form of lawsuit, and that's they go to jail, they lose their pensions, they lose their careers. It's forever in their record. They can never serve in public capacity ever again.
Mm-hmm.
And those are a whole nother, you don't typically gain money on those, maybe a little bit, but not like you do on the Title 42s. So that's what my main thing is we're teaching people. We do a law call every Thursday night. It's open to anyone. And we help arm people with knowledge, because that is the protection of our freedom. They don't teach it in school anymore. And so we're teaching it on these law calls.
Right. Well, that's fantastic. In my search for different answers, my own personal research, and as I've gone out and I've talked to different guests on this radio show and others, one thing that I'm finding is that there is really a groundswell going on at a grassroots level. People are starting to discover that this, in fact, is a corporation, and that they're just bent on revenue. They're just bent on finding every conceivable way to make to make a dollar. And in doing so, I'm finding more and more people, Randi, that are trying to do this in a different way, that aren't really going into court and going into their courts and trying to get remedy from their law, but rather they're trying to go in with an approach, in more of a common law type of way. Are you seeing a lot of success, using their own code against them, if you will?
It's a tough fight, I'm telling you. You can use their own code against them, and then they'll find a way to flip that too. They flat don't listen. They flat don't listen. Now, is there some victories? Yes, but you got to be willing to take it to Facebook. You got to be willing to take it to Twitter. You've got to draw attention to it. For example, there's a case out there that's ongoing right now. If you look up interracial couple attacked by TSA, this is a case out in California, and they had requested the copy of the footage from the airport. Now, a lot of times airports, hospitals, etc., that footage will disappear and you'll never get your hands on it. Somehow they were able to get it before it was disappeared, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And, so they're using that evidence. Now, the tape, you can't hear what's going on, but that particular case was they started talking to the wife because I guess the tags were out of date. And so the husband turns back and says, so write a ticket. It's just TSA. They have no arresting powers whatsoever. Everybody thinks, oh my gosh, I got to listen to them like a real cop. But in fact, they have no arresting powers. None. And so you'll see them go after the guy. Now, that particular guy has been on the cover of Flex magazine, Muscle magazine. I don't know how many times. He's beastly. I've sat with him. I've met with him many times. And he could easily take down the however many TSA guys that attacked him. But he's very involved with the 42s. He understands. He's learning the law and the constitutional rights, etc. And so he didn't put up too much of a fight in that video. But I'm telling you, if you looked him up, you would say absolutely, because he took first place. He traveled the world. And then his wife, they go after her. They yank her out of the car. So that's a suit that's been filed as a 42 and an 18. It's also called a Title 18 because the TSA was violent. They stepped out of their bounds of what they're even allowed to do. So it's like thugs. They're just lawless thugs.
Right.
And and so let me take this back full circle to what you were saying. When they went before the court, they're supposed to be put in front of a judge, and they were not put in front of a judge. They do these little trick things, put you in front of a magistrate, which is different. Right. And so they try to fool you. And if you don't have full knowledge, you're going to be in trouble. So if somebody, must file a Title 42 or a Title 18, or they want to go into the court, you've got to study your rights. There's tons of free stuff on YouTube, or hire a lawyer who specializes in Title 42s. There's Theodore Four, who's out in Iowa. That's all he does. And he actually had run for House or Senate, I don't remember what, and he told me a story of serious corruption of someone who was going to run, who was very similar to me. Theodore did the same thing also, and the Republican Party didn't like him, and so they were creating a lie about this particular person that was running. He was a former Marine, meritorious everything, and good-looking guy, single, and they were going to create a story that he had sex with an underage female to destroy him because he was such a good guy, they didn't want him to win.
Right.
That's Republican Party in Iowa.
It's always a sex scandal, isn't it? I mean,
right.
That's
and by the way, keep in mind, that was many years ago, and that was not Theodore Spore. It was a story about a young Marine that was running. He was about 27, 28, who was very well liked by everyone but the Republicans.
Right. So what I hear you saying, Randi, is the reason why these people are having such success with the Title 42s and even some of those with the Title 18s is because they're bringing like lots of exposure to this fraud corporation and these corporate courts, or I don't even want to call them courts. They're not courts. They're something else. So the way they're gaining victory is just by bringing this into the public in such a huge way that they can't stand it. It's like a vampire in the sunlight, right? You bring that sunlight and the vampire melts away. And is that what you're saying?
That's right. That's exactly what you have to do. You have to be willing to go all out. You got to tell a lot of people. Safety always comes into question. There's a cop who took on the entire police force in L.A., and he ended up winning his state court by a narrow thread because he brought in an independent counsel. The chief of police, the internal affairs, all the cops around him all lied on record in the courtroom. And so he brought in an independent investigative organization, and they found him not guilty. He is such a good man, this guy. And now he's filing into federal court. But he ended up having to move his family out of state, his children out of state, and his life became in danger because he took on the police force. And once he won his state case, what happened is about 600 cops came out of the woodwork and said, we want to do what we can. We've got this, we've got that. So not every cop is a bad cop. But I will say this, the opposing counsel that was in that courtroom, the day that he won the case at state level, the opposing counsel said to him, or said to the judge, I don't even understand why he wants to be a cop anyway, because he was reinstated, he was given his $80,000 plus in back pay, given his job back. The opposing counsel says all he wants to do is follow the Constitution.
Right.
And this cop says in reply, first of all, the opposing counsel said, he doesn't want to enforce the statutes and codes and the regulations. And so the cop speaks up on his behalf. Of course I want to follow the Constitution.
Right.
Because these statutes and codes and regulations, they are unconstitutional many times. They get passed, but until somebody stands up in a courtroom and fights them and takes them on,
that's right,
then they stand as law. And people will just pay the ticket, bent license plate, pay the ticket, not fight. One night, I had on my law call about 3-4 weeks ago, I had a local Miami police officer. He was Miami, and before that he was up in New York. He was NYPD. So he's done both forces. He was another cop who was railroaded by a cop in the force. He won his case. It went to trial. Took a year. He was, humiliated and demeaned, etc. He ended up staying with the force an additional 3 years and finally got out. He's a pretty young guy. He's in his 40s. And he got out because he just saw the police force for what it was. And his advice to us on the call was fight every single ticket, take every one of them into the courtroom, because chances are the cops won't show up, or it'll be their day off, and it'll just, you just motion to dismiss. And, or if it's not even to trial, just, look, where's the witness?
Right.
This didn't happen. And if you think you're going to lose, then file no contest immediately. If you think you're going to lose, you get in there, you see the cop showed up, and he's loaded for bear. Even though you're railroaded, then just say no contest. And then you still avoid the points and things on your licenses, which then avoids higher insurance rates.
Right. Yeah. That's, going back to what you were saying about the officer in California. It seems like we've heard a story about an officer that that basically defied the system and got trapped in a cabin, and they burned him down in the cabin.
Isn't that great? It's okay for them to murder. It's okay for them to hunt you down and murder you. No trial, no justice. People never got to hear from him.
So I think he probably had a good reason for leaving the state. Your acquaintance, your friend there in California. It just seems like to me they like to track people down and burn them in cabins. So they don't want you to speak. They don't want the people to speak out. And that's why people would just shut their TVs off and start to get involved in life, start living life. I won't really say where I've been, but for the last 4 or 5 days, I went to a place with no internet, and I had to go down the mountain to get to the internet, so I didn't do that too much. It rained quite a bit across the country, and it was raining where I was, and no television. It was wonderful. Shut it off. I'm wondering how'd you survive without internet, Randy?
You know what? Sometimes it's just great to just get off of it and unplug. And, when I got on, if I went down the mountain and plugged into the internet, I was on it for 20 minutes maximum. You just have to unplug and get back to the basics of reality. And that reminds me, in that trip, I paid a visit. I always try to turn every trip into something where it's extremely useful. And I paid a visit. Someone told me about a Vietnam vet who served in the Air Force for, I think it was 23 years. He's 87 years old, 85, 87 years old. Just an incredible man. Now, I got to say, he was shredded for an 85, 87-year-old man. The man didn't have fat on his body. He moved around perfectly. He was totally built in his chest and his arms, very fit. And so I asked him a lot of questions, and this person has no faith in the government whatsoever right now. He said his exact words is, "I'm very shaky on it." And I said, well, tell me what you're thinking. And this is a man of great experience, and for the most part living off the land. He doesn't buy any meat. He hunts all of his meat, wild boar and deer. He had his own, I guess it would be a meat grinder. They dry, him and his wife, she's 84, she's just a sweet woman. They dry out all their meat, so they're not getting any of the antibiotics in their bodies. They're not getting any of the GMO in their bodies. They were both fit, for their age, incredible. A gun in every corner of every room. He built a house by his own hands many years ago into a mountain, and it's all concreted out except for 1 or 2 walls. It was amazing. And then he was self-employed. He had run his own business after he got out of the Air Force all those years. And so, he kind of had a little bit of junk piled up, but that was just leftovers from his company. But sharp in the mind and, never turns on a television, lives on a stocked lake. Just, that's, if people would just go back to that, about 200 and I don't know how many years ago, I want to say it was something like 90% of the population was entrepreneurs.
That's exactly right.
They had their own businesses. Yeah.
Yep.
And now you fast forward it to today, 200 years forward, and 90% are now employees of somebody. Just bail from that system.
Right.
Start your own business, even if it's small. And the one thing that I learned, this weekend, I had a real reality check, because I have a lot of business ventures, is what is all the scratching and clawing for? What's it all for? When you can live that simple and be that happy, no television, rare internet, get your own food. I was just amazed. He was kind of a stiff, stuffy kind of man, But here was. Can I swear on air? Am I allowed?
Yeah, go ahead. I don't think they're going to beep you out, Randy.
Okay, all right. This guy was a no bullshit man. I mean, he had no time for stupid people, and he has no time for bullshit. He's very matter of fact, and I loved him. And, when we parted ways, I gave him a big hug. He thought I was great because I have some gun knowledge, not a ton, but he was just happy to see a woman who actually shot a .357, who owns a .500, who, he brought out the gun he had bought for his wife, and I handled it well. And so we just had a great time. It was an incredible visit, and one that'll stay with me a long time.
Well, Randy, I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's the entire intention of this particular show, is getting back to that which God ordained. It's just that simple. I mean, it began with the whole process in the garden. It was just that simple. That's what the original intent was. And yes, sin came in and we had dead and all that stuff, but that was supposed to be taken care of at the cross. And since that time, we've been living in this fiction, and some people have managed to figure out how to get back to that original intent and live like that man that you're talking about, that you met this past week. And that's really where we have to go. We have to learn who we are, where we came from, and just stand on that, and not let these corporate shrills, who are actually lower life forms than we are, because we were created by God. God imparted his sovereignty to us. We are the sovereigns. And
that's right.
And we actually made those corporations. So they're a lower life form. How is it that we're taking authority, or that we're allowing them to have authority over us? That doesn't make any sense to me, Randy.
That's the thing. We were all like, I don't know, it just was slowly melded into us. You know what I mean? And now people are waking up, they're stopping drinking the fluoride. That was something that was put in there. No questions. People didn't ask questions, and I really believe there is a huge difference in people that drink the unfluoridated water versus the fluoridated. And it's coming from the air too. When I was on the plane, I actually took video footage of the planes chemtrailing while we were flying through the air. And they were just up there on, they were a little bit higher than we were. Some of them quite a bit higher. But they absolutely papered the town where I was. Papered it. Incredible. When I got out into the wilds, we'll say, the air was better. It still wasn't great, but they're going everywhere in this country. I remember talking to somebody one time, a friend of mine from Arkansas, and he goes, "Oh, well, our nickname is I think it's the clean state or something. I don't know what their motto is," but he goes, "They're not chemtrailing in our state." I said, "Okay, hang on a sec." I went to the search engines real quick. I love startpage.com because, they don't track everything, at least we think.
Yeah.
But I went there and I looked up Arkansas and chemtrails, and sure enough, I pulled up a bazillion images, and I sent it. You know, you just got to wake people up slowly, but don't sit there. Everyone needs to wake people up. Share stories, like them. You know, I share a lot of things, and I made a post before I took off because Ben Swan is investigating chemtrailing and cloud seeding, and a friend of mine reached out and said, give me everything you have. He's going to investigate this. And I said, okay. So I put a post up, and a lot of people put incredible things on my Facebook page, which mine is Go Randi Shannon, Randi spelled with an I, facebook.com/Go Randi Shannon. And there is some incredible posts. They started about a week ago, about 4 or 5 days ago, I guess.
Yeah, I saw that post. I kept thinking I should go put some of those pictures I've taken on there, but I never got around to it.
Yeah, no, post those pictures and get them out there, because some people, I'm telling you what, I have over 4,000 friends. Not, of course, I don't know them all, on my Facebook page, and so many people have sent me messages saying, wow, I didn't know anything about it. Oh, I thought it was only in other places. I had no idea what was in that. You know, so everybody needs to share and help educate, and slowly people are waking up. But I will say this. The general consensus is, and this Air Force vet, Vietnam vet, said the same thing. They don't see a peaceful way to reset this clock. And that part is the unfortunate part. But you know what? That's how this country became this country. So I'm not advocating it. I don't want it. I'd like to see peace. I'd like to see these people just be arrested, like, you know, in Iceland, where they ran them out or they arrested them.
Right.
I would just love to see the men with spines who aren't drinking the fluoride get in there and do a mad arrest. And I can't imagine that it's not being discussed somewhere at some level.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, Randi, we're going to take a 30-second water break here, and while we do that, I'm going to give out the number. If someone wants to call in and ask Randi a question, it's 619-639-4605. That's 619-639-4605. We'll be back in just 30 seconds. Do you remember the series of the 70s and 80s? You know, the Dukes of Hazzard, I Dream of Jeannie, Mork and Mindy, Hogan's Heroes, the list goes on and on and on. Of course you do. Why? Because they were family-friendly shows. What's the one place you can go on the internet to find them? www.retroshowsarbetter.com. Go by my A store and get yourself some popcorn and a movie and meet me there. All right, people, this is Rick Hidalgo on the House of Hidalgo show on the estate. I am with Randi Shannon today, and Randi has been telling us about all kinds of great things. She mentioned 42... Boy, I forgot to write it down, Randi. What was the name of that website?
It's 42 Action. It's the numbers, the 4 and the 2, action.org. 42action.org. We have some really cool documents on there. I wrote them myself out of just things that I learned. Traffic stops, information of what to say, what to ask for when you get pulled over. It is a really cool doc, and I go into great detail. If this happens, do this. If this happens, do this. And again, I'm not a practicing attorney. I'm just saying what I would do. There's a 3-day divorce doc on there. What a lot of attorneys in this country will never tell you is that you can actually get divorced within 3 days. I don't care what state you're in. I don't care what their rules are, what their laws are. You know, some marriages just aren't meant to be, and there is a 3-day divorce. I will say it does require flying to Puerto Rico. But if you want to fly to paradise, it's a simple, and that's not very far. That's not even an hour flight out of Miami. So, and then no Social Security required. There's a document on there that banks violate all the time. It's a Privacy Act. It is a law. And colleges do it, you name it. If you apply for a college and they ask you for your Social Security number, the Privacy Act protects you. and they'll tell you you cannot get in without it. And so the information that is in that document, if you want to unplug from using your Social Security number, you should get that document because it tells you the ins and outs of the law and what they can and cannot ask you and what to do if they do ask that. There's 2 ways to sue them, and it is a lawsuit. And you know what? I grew up in the church, and the church always said, don't sue, let God figure it out. Well, we also have brains, and we also have the ability and the means to take care of some things ourselves. So that document helps you. There is 2 ways to do it. One is a 42 lawsuit, and the other is where you go after them. It's for $1,000 per violation, and we tell you exactly what to do. It's in that document. Those documents are incredible. Everybody should have a copy of all of them, and those are the only way that we actually take any money off of 42 action is if you are interested in the docs and you buy those. Otherwise, the law call is free, the site is free, free registration. If people want to know how to get on the law call, and we have phenomenal guests, incredible guests, where we go over, if you have a case and you email us ahead of time, we will talk about your case. If it fits in with some of the speakers that we have, if we know that they've got the knowledge or they've walked the walk, we will try to line that up, and we'll discuss your case and help give you remedy what we would do. So, and you notice I always have to say that because they'll come and arrest me for practicing law as a non-attorney.
Well, as if the attorneys even have a license or any practical means by which to practice law. But
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
The old days, it used to be if you had the knowledge of the Constitution, of the Bill of Rights, you would go before a judge and he'd ask you a few questions, and he'd say, okay, you're an attorney. That's what the old-time attorneys were. Now it's been turned into this taking an oath to the crown.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know that, Randy. A lot of people don't understand what the bar is, and that it is the British, oh boy.
Accredited something.
Registry.
Yep. So, it's a whole stacked game.
That's exactly right. And, going back to something that you just said a minute ago, you said you were raised in the church and, they talked about, not suing. I think one of the things that we struggle with in this country, Randy, is there are a lot of people who go to church, but the church doesn't even know how to, what's truth anymore. And in fact, that particular scripture that you're talking about really doesn't pertain to going out and suing a corporation or suing other entities. It talks about suing each other as Christians. It just looks bad when you sue each other as Christians. That's the whole gist of it. So anybody out there who's thinking, I would never sue anybody for anything because the Bible tells me not to, that's just not the truth. That's not what it says at all. It's talking about each other. Well,
people would actually read it. You gotta tune out the world, and for about a week and a half to 2 weeks, read the book. That's all it would take.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. Some incredible stories in there. There's one pastor that really has a grip on what's going on and about, taking up the sword and different things. And I was listening to an interview, and I'm trying to think of what station he was on. I don't know, but it's now I don't agree with everything that he preaches, but Chuck Baldwin, Pastor Chuck Baldwin, and his son. Yeah, and it was an interview I was listening to of his son just in the last couple weeks, and it was incredible. And they talked about the sword and Caesar days, and and what that really means about fighting back, and how they were told to get the sword, but the sword was illegal. Only military were allowed to have it, and you had to be in the Roman army. And so to even be commanded to go get that sword was breaking the law of the land. And so anyway, they gave a good description of it. I couldn't even tell you what station it was, but they have it going on. They understand what's going on in this country right now, and the whole wanting to ban the guns and that sort of thing. they really talk about it. Apparently they put out a book. I haven't gotten it. I would like to get that book.
You know, and on that note, let me ask you what you think about this. You've obviously heard of the Adam, what's his name, Kokesh?
Yeah. Mhm.
You've heard of that whole deal where he was wanting to take in a bunch of people armed into Washington and do a protest, and of course it's illegal, or so-called illegal, whatever, over in Washington D.C. in order to carry openly.
Right.
What do you think about that, Randy? What's your take on that whole Adam Kokesh thing?
Okay, I've been looking at that, saying, hell yeah, it's all right. And then I just really go back and forth on it, because I can see the enemy turning that into something. But at the same time, at what point do we stand for our rights? Could there be a better way to do it? Yeah. Instead of maybe doing that, why don't we march in and arrest them? Do citizens arrest. Let's go in and arrest. Let's do something that actually has. I would hate to see him have to sit in jail for the next 5 years, or whatever it is the government plans on doing to him, because I think he's far more effective out. But I get the premise. I totally get it. We must stand in unison. I'm just thinking, can't we stand in unison and go in and arrest these people? I mean, can't we do what Iceland did? Can't we stand in unison and just say to hell with it? When Jesus threw over the money changer tables and was outraged, it's because of the same system that is in place today.
Absolutely.
Can't we be overthrowing this stuff? There's a way to salvage it. These 535 politicians, 9 judges, and 1 president are destroying the country. How hard is it to go arrest 535 people? And then, that's just at the federal level. How about the state level? I guess if we knew we had law enforcement or some sort of enforcement, then that could be done. It could be done overnight. It would be a sweeping move. Because, look,
right.
If you look at the Bible, you look at what happened in Noah's day. God was outraged. He reset the earth, basically, saving a few. He reset the earth. That's what they want to do. And if we just keep sitting here, they're going to reset the earth, because they think they're God. Does that make sense? It kind of just struck me this week when I was alone and just had nothing but quiet time, the rain, listening to all that rain, no TV, and I was just sitting there thinking, they're eugenicists. They don't like you and me. They don't want us here living and breathing. They're poisoning us at every level. Someone sent me a text last night that there's a MERS virus that's going around the world, which how easy would that be to get if you just get on a plane, I suppose. And they want to they're resetting the earth right now. They're making everybody sick with chemtrails, the water. How people are literally going their whole lives being poisoned. The food is poison, the air is poison, the water is poison. You going to just let the poisoning continue? They're resetting the earth. They're changing the DNA. You look at Angelina Jolie. She goes and lops off her breast because she is potentially got, the breast cancer gene or whatever. But, on Natural News, they did a really good story on that. And Alex Jones did just a phenomenal interview with somebody, I want to say from Longevity or, is there a guy named Alan Fuchs? Mike Fuchs?
Yeah, I think so.
He's got a pretty good listenership. I've only heard him one time. I'm sold. I want to hear him all the time now. He talks about the genes and what they're doing to all of our supply, food, water, and air. It's the 3 things you need to live. And she should have never had them chopped off. How about quitting the drinking, the mad drinking, the massive chain smoking, go to non-GMO food, everything totally organic. Don't drink the fluoridated water. Right. Grow your own garden. There's simple fixes. And he said we are all slowly walking into the gas chambers. Every day we're walking into those gas chambers when we eat the GMO food, when we drink the fluoridated water, etc. When are people going to say enough is enough?
You're right, and to think that the one thing that we have on our side is the one thing people aren't willing to do, and that is take that consent away. That's the whole ball of wax, is that we're consenting. We're saying, please poison me, please
Yeah.
poison me, and until we take that consent away and say no, we are the sovereign. We are the ones who control this. That's our Declaration of Independence, our Bill of Rights, our Constitution. That's it's built around the fact that we are self-governing beings. I'm not advocating a wipeout of government. We need government, but they have a fiduciary responsibility to uphold the law. And what they're doing now is not a law. It's poison, like you said.
Yeah. Well, they actually are public servants. They're supposed to be serving us, and instead they're serving their own self-interest. Whenever they leave office, they're all multi-millionaires. How'd they get that? Well, because they gave themselves raises. They don't pay taxes. They get insider trading. They do dirty deals. When I was running for state senate in Iowa, the Republican governor or the staff around him, or I don't know who it was, but they had us meet with lobbyists on several occasions, and those lobbyists are there for a reason. They're feeling you out to see if they're going to give you money for your campaign or not. It's a corrupt system from the moment go, and if they don't give it directly to you, maybe your kids will all of a sudden be able to go to the best Ivy League schools, and it didn't cost you a penny. Know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how these deals are done. That's how these deals are done. They do it in a way that the public doesn't see, and it's just an entirely corrupt system. And if they mess with you like they messed with me, they just make you out to be just an evil person. That means they're concerned about you. That means they know you're on the right track, and they must destroy you. Destroy your name, destroy your reputation, smear you, make you look horrific, make you look terrible, like you said, like a tax evader, or, they brought up my ex-husband's issues. I mean, come on. Seriously? They said in the robocalls, they said I was, I have, in 12 years, maybe 4 tickets, something like that. I don't think that's too bad. One was for not stopping completely at a stop sign, a couple speeding tickets probably, and that's in 12, 14 years. But when they did the robocalls, they said, did you know that Randi Shannon would be considered a habitual offender in the state of Iowa? Seriously?
Oh.
But the person who is unaware has no idea what that means. They're like, oh my God, she would be a habitual offender?
Yeah.
It's just craziness.
I know you must be a horrible person, Randi, but I appreciate you anyway. I gotta say this. Here you are talking about, you didn't stop completely at a stop sign, or maybe you're going a little too fast through a speed zone, and I guess what you did, Randi, is you injured the state so severely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you injured the state so severely by not following the letter of their code that you're habitually. Well, I guess you're habitually sinning against the state of Iowa, is what you were doing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, I got a good one. I got a phone call in the last couple weeks from a gentleman who had gone into I guess it was Yellowstone. I'm pretty sure it was Yellowstone. I know it was a national park out that way. And they said, they were they went to the national park with a group of people. They were in their 20s, okay? This is a friend of one of my sons. They were in a national park. They saw the antlers just laying on the ground of some animal, whether it was an elk or I don't know what the animal was. So they're like, wow, cool. And they picked up the antlers, threw them in the car. Now, that's a dead carcass. What's going to happen to that? I don't know. But it's a dead carcass, and in these national parks, or maybe even state, they have a rule that says you can't, if it's there, you leave it. They never saw the sign, or because they're in their 20s, didn't care. And so they left the park. They had spent like several days there, paid for the passes and everything to be there. They went into a restaurant, and after they were sitting in the restaurant, now they are not in the national park at all anymore. 2 police officers come in and say, apparently they had run the tag, and they shouted in the restaurant with all the public to hear the person's name. And so, of course, the person stood up. They're like, what's the matter? They were, like, concerned. Someone died in my family, and you'd somehow track me down kind of thing. And they ID'd them. They wrote them a ticket for $300 for picking up a dead animal's antlers. And then, of course, they took the antlers back.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, what does America come to? Seriously? $300 fine for picking? Now, if that was on the side of a road in your state or in the state of Iowa, and you picked up the antlers, what would happen? Nothing. It's going to eventually rot back into the ground, and that's the end of the story. Nobody, it's just craziness. Like, what have we come to?
Well, yeah, again, that individual offended the state by picking up a rotting carcass.
Mm-hmm. So that is a federal crime because that is considered a federal park. So they're actually dealing with federal court.
Wow.
Which is even scarier to them. They're just young. They asked me for help. So
sure.
They set a court date. People should know this on the call. If a court date is set and you were not asked if that is okay with you, you have a right to motion for time or ask for time. You just call the clerk and say, hey, that doesn't work for me. I need more time. And especially if you're out of state, you can ask for 30 extra days, and they should grant it to you because the court date has to be good for both parties. And if they ignore you on that, then your case should be dismissed at that point because they've already broke the law. That is a law that it must be agreeable to both sides. So I went ahead and helped write up a motion for time for them, and we put it in. It was a request for time. And we put it 30 days out so that he could go ahead and figure out what he was going to do. And they went and had a meeting, and they set it for 6 days later. They totally didn't listen. They're breaking the rules.
Right.
It has to be good for both parties.
One of the things that's come up before on some of my calls is a lot of people are having that same problem, Randy. They're not listening, and I think that there is a presumption in law that they're dealing with, that we are dead entities to them, and we have to rebut that presumption because they can't hear a dead entity. So until we rebut that presumption and say, look, hey, I'm a living flesh. I bleed, and here I am. I'm for real. I'm not sure that they're ever going to hear us. But that's just my particular take on it.
Well, there is that. But you just got to remember, all the state courts are corrupt, pretty much. There's a good guy to study. His name is Dean Clifford, and I love what he has to say. Dean Clifford, he has a bunch of videos on YouTube, just does it all for free. And, he just won't even give them the time of day. And, yeah, he's gone to jail. You got to be willing to go to jail a few times. And, he doesn't sign any papers. He won't answer any questions. Right. I think he was the same guy that he didn't want to eat the GMO food, so he requested all organic, basically, like bananas that were still in the peel. Things like that. And so they starved him they brought him GMO food for 8-9 days. He said, no, you didn't listen to what I told you. I told you I wanted this. You bring that to me. And so like the 8th or 9th day, guess what they brought him? Bananas. And then shortly after that, they let him go. Because the problem is what you said, consenting to their system. If you never consent, if you get pulled over, and there's no crime committed, you don't have to give a license. This isn't Germany. We don't walk around with our papers. You there's so many ways around it, and it all boils down to consent. Don't consent to them. Don't sign anything. Don't make a plea. If you go into the courtroom and they say, in the preliminary, they say, what's your plea? Guilty, not guilty, no contest, what? No plea. I'm not making a plea. Well, the judge is going to put in a plea of not guilty for you. Oh, okay, so the judge is acting like a lawyer? Okay. Well, then he'll be in trouble for that. You know, he should be removed from the bench, or he should step down from the bench if he wants to act like a lawyer. He's making a plea for me? That's against the law. A judge can't do that. But every day across this country and across this world, judges put in pleas for people that are always not guilty. Oh, so I'm going to call the judge as a witness because he says I'm not guilty. The judge just said I'm not guilty.
Right.
You have to fight back. You have to fight back and say things like that.
Right.
The judge is I'm going to call the judge as my witness because he just said I was not guilty. He put in the plea for me.
That's exactly
People
right.
have to give them a thumb in their face. People have to give grief back.
If they want to, if that's exactly right. If they want to act like the trustee, then they need to take that trusteeship appropriately. They need to, if they want to be the administrator of my estate, then they need to be working on behalf of my estate and not against me. So that's exactly right.
Yeah. So anyway, Dean Clifford has really good stuff, lots of good videos. People can learn a lot if they study it and share those videos with other people. Bodnarick does, I don't know if I say his name right, but he does a lot of great constitutional courses. He's inspired me. I actually am going to teach a 6-week constitutional course on the Bill of Rights like they've never seen before, never heard in homeschool, never heard in regular school, to homeschoolers. That starts here in just a couple weeks. Just an hour a day. And, you know, I debated, do it, don't do it. My schedule's so busy. Do I have time for this? Can I actually schedule to be at a certain place every week for 1 hour? And the thing that pulled me to it was this bottom line. Those little minds, those fresh, moldable minds will learn the Constitution and their rights, whether it's 10 kids or 15 kids or 25 kids. That'll be that many more that will fight for freedom one day and fight for their rights one day. So that was like what pulled me. I did a pros and cons. Can I do this? Can I commit to it? And I just decided no matter what, I'm going to make the time to do this course for these kids. And I'm volunteering. This is free. I'm not getting paid for that. And I just wish other people would do things like that too.
Yeah, amen. I think we're starting to see a groundswell on that, Randy. I know a lot of people that are beginning to put out the energy to help people, to do classes, to start radio programs, things that they're not getting paid for because, you know, there's just so much information to get out there and people are really in need and it's only getting more and more desperate as we go. So, Randy, I got basically a minute and a half left. If you want to say something in closing to let people know where maybe they can find you on Facebook or whatever you'd like.
Yeah, my personal Facebook page is Go Randi Shannon, and I also have a 42 Action page on Facebook as well. The official Randi Shannon for Senate. Even though I pulled from my race, I ended my campaign. It was a winnable campaign. People need to know I pulled away because of the corruption. I decided 4 years of that BS was not where I wanted to spend my time, and I knew I would be far more effective in other places. And I was called every name in the book. You're a quitter. How could you do that? They need you. But the bottom line is that system, as it stands today, as a corporation, is not fixable. And it would be 4 years of wasted time. Yes, I could call a press conference at will and tons of people would show up for it. The press would show up for it. But you know what? I would just be smeared even more. So what's the point? So I've gone in a direction where I can actually make a difference and help people. And, 42 Action, it's not that we're anti-government, but rather anti-corruption in the government. That's the tagline. And that knowledge is your primary defense. If people aren't educated, then it's going to go nowhere. We're going to stay dumb, and they're just going to continue to march off to the gas chambers. And I'll say this, Coast to Coast did a story, and I'm going to post the videos up hopefully later today on my Facebook page it was 3 separate scientists that did a story on the chemtrails and what's in the air. And apparently all 3 have wound up dead. None of them knew each other, different parts of the world, etc. They're all dead now. And what they had found was plutonium on the fish bodies, plutonium on the ground. That's what's coming from the sky. What men are going to stand up and put a stop to that? I want to know.
That's a great way to close off the show. A challenge from Randi Shannon. Randi, I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for being here today. I want to thank you for being so out there. I love the fact that you're so aggressive on the microphone, just telling people how it is, and that's great because we need more people like you. So thanks again for being here, Randi.
Thank you so much for having me. I love to spread the word as much as I can. Just please, everybody, do some sort of action, something, even if it's small. If you're fearful, fear is of the devil if you're a believer. You got to just get over it. You got to overcome it. Just go out there. Share something on Facebook. Share something on Twitter. Share it in your personal email. Make phone calls. Measure your ground soil. There's a company online that, they'll send you a test. You spend the $40, $50, $60. Find out what's in your soil. You do a before and after the chemtrail spraying. You just got to do a search. I don't know who the company is, but take action. Share the results. Share the information. Take it to the sheriff. Take it to somebody higher up that maybe will do something about it. Let's get these people to stand. We need to join together. It's our civic duty to help one another.
That's right. And for Randi Shannon, this is Rick Hidalgo. This has been The Estate on the House of Hidalgo radio show. Thank you again all, and God bless.